Hey, number ones, welcome to Metatron's Academy. So, what is the hardest language in the world according to Brian Wiles, a massive YouTuber, by the way? I know of him, but I don't believe I've ever watched a video of his. So, I'm curious to see what he thinks. He says Arabic, Mandarin, Japanese, and perhaps he's going to say more. This is from a year ago, so I don't know if he changed his mind. But let's check this out and let's see if we agree with this.
What are the world's most difficult languages? Well, according to the Foreign Service Institute, it's these 5. And today we're going to compare the 3 most widely spoken languages on this list: Arabic, Mandarin, and Japanese. To answer the question, what is the hardest language for English speakers to learn? بس يا براين ليه المفروض اننا بنسمع كلامك؟ انت بس امريكي اللي بيعمل فيديوهات عن اللغات في يوتيوب. そうですね。でも僕はこれらの言語を何年も一人で勉強していましたよ。所以说实话，我知道是什么让他们变得很困难，而且没有那么困难。So let's dive in. First of all, let me explain.
So I can't judge his Arabic because I don't speak it. So do let me, I don't know anything in fact. So if you do speak Arabic, let me know what you think. I thought his Japanese, I mean, you can't really judge it because it's a memorized sentence. Anyone can do that. But then again, his Japanese sounded okay. His Mandarin, I'm not sure about the pronunciation, but we'll see. Let's continue.
Explain how I'll be comparing these languages, because in my opinion, there are really 3 criteria that make learning a given language more or less difficult. 1, pronunciation.
Sure.
2, reading and writing systems, aka text. And 3, grammar. Everything else, in my opinion, is either true for every language or else largely determined by these factors. The battle for hardest pronunciation.
I would say that this is only in a situation where we are evaluating objective difficulty, because every language has 2 separate parameters: objective difficulty and subjective difficulty. Objective difficulty really is determined by those characteristics of that language which are, as the name suggests, objectively difficult regardless of where you're coming from. Subjective difficulty instead is what is sort of the meter that you use to compare it with you, the learner. So depending on what your first language is, a language that would be objectively harder might be easier for you because of where you're coming from. And that is an important aspect when evaluating difficulty of languages. But if this is a video specifically dedicated to objective difficulty alone, then it's fine. He didn't say anything wrong. Just wanted to add.
I want to start with Japanese here because, believe it or not, Japanese pronunciation is actually relatively easy for English speakers. More or less every sound in the language is also present in English.
It's easier for Romance language speakers. Because Romance language speakers, we also have, while we have sort of very similar sounds like that, our vowels are closer to the Japanese vowels than the vowels of an Anglophone. So Anglophones will end up saying stuff like arigato. And so there is that I wanted to underline.
Possible exceptions being hu and which require some slight adjustment. Cool. Now, Japanese does also have something called pitch accent, which determines whether a syllable is pronounced with a slightly higher or lower tone.
Good guy. Okay, good. I appreciate when people say this.
For instance, the word hashi means chopsticks, and hashi means bridge.
Very good.
Now, that sounds a bit confusing, but keep in mind that English does something pretty similar. Consider this word, for instance. We might pronounce it as present, as in a gift, but it could also be present, as in I will present the information. Now, technically that's emphasis and not pitch accent, but in my opinion, if you listen to Japanese audio on a regular basis, you'll get familiar with the concept over time.
I do not understand this statement at all. What does that mean? They are 2 separate things. I didn't stop and say it because I thought, well, he's going to clarify that. And he did. He did. One is stress, in fact, and the other one is pitch. They're completely separate. You can use it to give an example. Say, look, it's the same word, but depending on how you pronounce it, so the example is not completely out of place. I'm not going to be pedantic about it. But this idea that the more you listen, the more you'll... I'm not sure what he means. Let's continue.
So for pronunciation, I give Japanese a difficulty rating of 4 out of 10. Okay, Mandarin...
Okay, I disagree with that because... Do I, though? I get it where he's coming from. Compared to a language like Mandarin, Japanese is objectively easier. I can agree with that. So I'll give him like... I'll half agree. But pitch is important. Not as important as some people make it sound, because then again, even if you mess up the pitch, it's not like anyone is going to ever think, when he took me out, when he told me about the date he had with this girl, did he give her Flowers, or did they give her noses? I mean, come on. So, of course, context is going to be king, and it's fine. Even if you don't know pitch, you will be understood in a majority of cases, but you will sound as foreign as it gets. So they will immediately know, not that it's a problem, but if you're talking about difficulty, we should talk about pronunciation mastery. So I think, once again, we can divide it in two. How difficult is it to get to a level of intelligibility? And then I would agree with him, nah, not too difficult. But how difficult is it to sound as close as possible to a native speaker? Then it becomes excruciatingly difficult. And that's an important aspect to underline. Not that everyone has to. It's fine to have a light accent or a little bit, as long as it doesn't impede communication. Mandarin, all right, come on.
Pronunciation, and we all know what this is going to be about. Those tones. Unlike Japanese and Arabic, Mandarin is a tonal language, which means that every syllable is pronounced according to a specific pitch pattern, and different patterns create different meanings. For instance, ma means mom, ma means horse, ma means to scold, and ma means something like rough or...
Let me hear that third. The others, I think, let me see.
Ma means...
Perfect.
Mom. Ma means horse.
Ma. Yeah, I think he did it really well, because a lot of people in the academic space tend to go ma, and they go up too much because that's how they're taught. But then again, that's very rare. The full academic third tone that goes down and then goes all the way up. Native speakers most of the time don't use it. Occasionally can be heard at the very end of a long sentence in isolation, but once again in the academic field. Otherwise, it's like it did. It's kind of it goes kind of low and slightly further low, but it never really goes back up.
Ma means to scold.
That's fine.
And ma means something like...
No, he did it well. Good tones.
Rough or coarse. So the sentence ma literally means mom scolds the rough horse. And to make it a question, we could also add the question marker, which is of course ma. Ma. Does mom scold the rough horse? Now look, that's a bizarre example, and in reality, no one would actually say something like that. But as you can see, learning to use tones correctly is essential for any Mandarin learner.
Of course.
Difficulty level, 9 out of 10.
I agree. Very good. Remember though, objectively. But if, for example, you're someone who studied music, you have a very musical ear, then for you it's not going to be that difficult as long as you have a good trainer. That difficulty is going to go down to 2. And I mean it. So once again, yeah, it's really difficult, but then again, depends. It really depends.
And finally, Arabic.
I don't know anything.
Arabic is not a tonal language, alhamdulillah. But it does have some sounds that are pretty bewildering for English speakers. At the top of that list, I would put qaf, ha, kha, dha, ghain, and of course, the granddaddy of challenging Arabic consonants, ayn. Now, mastering these sounds on their own is difficult, but learning to string them together at a natural pace takes massive dedication.
Yeah,
and I can tell you that after 7 years of studying Arabic, I still struggle with saying the very simple phrase, good morning. Sabah al-khair. The ha and the kha that close together is tough. Now look, Arabic speakers will understand what you're saying even if you sound like a janky robot. Assalamu alaikum. But speaking Arabic naturally is a very different proposition. And with that in mind, I give Arabic pronunciation a 9 out of 10 difficulty rate.
Okay, so he's putting it at the same level as Mandarin, but unfortunately I can't comment because I haven't got a clue. What do you guys think? Do you agree? If you know, let me know in the comments.
The battle for hardest language to read.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's start with Arabic this time. As you may know if you've watched my channel, Arabic has an alphabet with 28 letters, or 29 if you include this little fellow, Hamza. Anyway, there are vowels and consonants, and each letter represents a specific sound. You get the idea. But there's a hitch, a big one. Short vowel sounds, that kind of thing, are almost never notated in Arabic script. For instance, this word can be alim, to know, alam, flag, or ilm, science.
That's very typical of Semitic languages. In fact, the idea of not specifying or even writing at all the vowels was a thing. It's a thing in Egyptian, it's a thing in biblical Hebrew, it's just how it is. So this doesn't, and all the other ones. So it does not surprise me at all.
And it's up to you to figure out which one it is based on context. And that tricky little feature makes Arabic much harder to read than a language like Hindi or Greek, because it's very tough to sound out words accurately. Difficulty rating, 7 out of 10.
Makes sense.
Okay, pretty challenging, but what about Mandarin? Well, Mandarin, of course, has no alphabet whatsoever. Instead, it has...
I am so curious because I have a very strong and perhaps a bit controversial take when it comes to which one is harder to read and write, Mandarin or Japanese. Let's see what he thinks, and then I'll share my opinion, and then we'll see.
Thousands of characters, which each represent a specific word, or sometimes several different words.
Yes.
For instance, this character can be 重, meaning heavy, or 重, which means to repeat.
That's kind of a rare occurrence in a massive amount of characters, but sure.
Likewise, this character can be 假, meaning vacation, or 假, meaning fake. Now, as you might imagine, this presents a challenge for the student of Mandarin, and if you want to read native text, books, newspapers, things like that, you'll need to memorize somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 of these individual characters to feel comfortable doing so.
I think 2,000 is sufficient for everyday alphabetization, though. That is, like, books and newspapers pushes it up quite a bit.
And if you want to write those characters by hand, you'll also need to learn the proper stroke order for each one.
Yes.
Oh my.
That is like the hardest ever.
But Brian, I've heard that Chinese can be written in either traditional or simplified characters. What if I just learn the simplified ones? They must be easier, right? Yeah, sure. Simplified characters, which are used on the Chinese mainland, are slightly streamlined sometimes, but still require a huge investment of time and energy to master.
Correct.
And if you visit Taiwan, Hong Kong, or most Chinese communities around the world, you'll find the text is largely written in traditional characters anyway. So the true scholar will want to learn both. Difficulty rating, 10 out of 10.
Fantastic, okay. But what is he going to do for Japanese, though, now? Because he gave 10 out of 10 to Mandarin. Fascinating. Is he one of those who thinks, well, yeah, but Japanese also has hiragana and katakana, so it's easier? Because I would monumentally disagree with that. Or what is he going to do? Is he going to put them at this? Let's see.
When it comes to reading and writing, however, Japanese is in a class of its own.
Yes,
it
thank
has
you.
not one, not two, but 3 different writing systems. Hiragana, katakana, and kanji. And to reach a high level in the language...
And if you want to know the pitch, is kanji is one of those that goes from low to high. It took me a while because I used to say kanji. And I thought it sounded right, at least in my ear, but it's kanji.
You'll need to learn all of them. Fortunately, hiragana and katakana are syllabaries, which are similar to alphabets. What's the difference? In an alphabet, each letter represents a specific sound that can be connected to other sounds to create a syllable. For instance, in English, the letter K, k, plus the letter A, equals the syllable ka. In a syllabary like hiragana, the syllable ka is represented by a single character, ka. And likewise, there's ki, ke, ku, and ko. Get the idea? And katakana are used in exactly the same way. Ka, ki, ke, ku, ko. So why does Japanese have 2 syllabaries that do basically the same thing? Well, katakana, this one, is specifically used for words with a non-Japanese origin or flavor. For instance, we can write the word uchi, house, in hiragana, but we would write the word apato, apartment, in katakana because, as you can hear, it's a loan word from English. Apato. But wait, there is yet another writing system, and it's a doozy. Kanji.
Okay, before he says that, one more situation in which the Japanese use katakana is for when they scream. In other words, it's there all caps in chat or like writing in general.
Kanji are derived from traditional Chinese characters. You remember those, right? And their meanings are often distantly related. For instance, in Japanese, this would be daijoubu, meaning all good or okay. But in Mandarin, it would be 大丈夫, which means a big man. There's a connection, right, but it's loose. So while knowing Chinese characters will definitely help you read Japanese kanji, you'll still need to clock some serious hours on Anki or Wani Kani or read the kanji, whatever you're into. So for reading and writing, I give Japanese a difficulty rating of 9.5 out of 10.
I disagree. I would have given 9 to Mandarin and 10 to Japanese. And here is the reason. Having put a lot of years into both, particularly Japanese, Mandarin makes a lot more logical sense. Not only that, but in Mandarin, objectively, once you learn how to pronounce a single character, exception being very few cases, that's going to be the pronunciation. One pronunciation per character, doesn't matter where you put it in a sentence or in which situation you run into it, you'll be able to read it. Now, once again, as I say, there are exceptions so that, yes, there are characters that, oh, in this case, it's read this way, like the character that you can read xing to be like correct, but then you find it in the compound of a bank and it's different. I get it, but it's extremely rare. And in majority of cases, once you have learned how to pronounce and the meaning of a Chinese character, you will be able to read it. Japanese, good luck with that. Japanese is not logical in the majority of instances, it's mnemonic. So, in Mandarin, you can understand why you're supposed to pronounce it a certain way. In Japanese, particularly with names of locations, sometimes it's impossible unless you have heard it before, even for native speakers. So Japanese is not only that, but then the same character will have sometimes from 3 to 7 to 10 different pronunciations. There is no question in my mind. The Japanese is objectively harder to read than Mandarin. And that's my position on that. So, yeah, the difficulty in Mandarin is that you also have to remember the tone. But if you really, really, really want to know or teach Japanese, you should know the pitch anyways. So at the end of the day, I guess you could learn the character in Japanese and completely mispronounce it if that's what you want. But do you really know it then? So I disagree with that.
Whoa, curveball, why is Mandarin harder than Japanese? Well, hiragana and katakana are actually pretty easy to learn. You can probably do it in
Yeah, I thought he was one of those who said, oh, it's because of hiragana and katakana. Yeah, I mean, no. I disagree. Because, yeah, great, you know how to learn the suffix, basically. You know the conjugation section, but you don't know what the heck the verb is unless you know the kanji, so...
long weekend if you're dedicated. And they can get you pretty far-ish. And if you learn 1,000 or so kanji on top of that, you'll be able to read it around an 8th grade level. For Mandarin, you would need to learn roughly 3 times as many characters to reach that same level of proficiency.
He'll have to show me data for that, because with 1,000 kanji, which I know about 2,000, although now I'm a little rusty, I'll admit that. With 1,000 in Japanese, I could chat. I could read the most important things, I guess, that you could see around town and whatnot. But 2,000 kanji, according to the Ministry of Education of Japan, is still the recommended number of characters needed for alphabet, to be considered to be someone who knows how to read and write at a basic level. Basic meaning like you're alphabetized. You can read and write. 2,000. So saying 1,000, I think is doing a little bit of weird math here that I disagree with. I don't think this is good nor representative. 2,000 characters in both languages are going to be sufficient for everyday interaction when it comes to reading and writing. The problem is that those 1,000 kanjis will have loads of different combinations of pronunciations, whereas in Mandarin, the majority of those will have a single pronunciation, and that makes a world of difference.
To me, that's definitely tougher. The battle for hardest...
Yeah, we have to disagree on that. Anyways, I'll skip the part on the grammar because kind of want to tell you guys, since the guy put a lot of work into this, clearly, while even though we disagreed, it doesn't matter. Go check out, if you liked the video so far, go click the link in the description, go finish watching his video, and maybe give him a like and a comment, so that we also help push his video rather than completely taking away the view. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And let me know if you agree with me, disagree. Not a problem. Bye.